In a kingdom nestled between whispering mountains and a sparkling sea, lived a king named Alaric. You might picture a king adorned in gold, surrounded by servants, his every whim a command. And you wouldn't be wrong. King Alaric had everything a monarch could ever desire: a magnificent castle, chests overflowing with jewels, and the allegiance of every soul in his domain. His life was a tapestry of lavish feasts, grand balls, and solemn decrees. Yet, amidst all this splendor, a strange emptiness echoed in the grand halls of his heart. He would gaze out from his balcony, watching his people in the town square below. He saw children chasing pigeons, their laughter echoing like tiny bells. He saw merchants haggling with playful grins, friends sharing stories over warm loaves of bread, and young couples stealing shy glances. They had so little compared to him, yet they possessed a treasure that seemed to elude him completely: genuine, unbridled joy. Their smiles were as bright and warm as the morning sun, while his own felt like a mask, heavy and cold. One day, while walking through the royal gardens, he saw his youngest gardener, a lad named Finn, humming a cheerful tune while tending to a bed of roses. Finn's clothes were patched, his hands were stained with soil, but his face was lit with a smile so pure it seemed to make the flowers themselves bloom brighter. The king approached him. "Finn," he said, his voice laced with a curiosity he hadn't felt in years. "You work from dawn till dusk. Your tasks are humble, yet you seem to be the happiest man in my kingdom. What is your secret?" Finn, startled but unafraid, looked up at the king. He wiped his brow with the back of his hand and smiled. "Your Majesty, I have no secret. I have my health, the sun on my face, and the satisfaction of seeing these roses grow. My wife packs me bread and cheese for lunch, and at night my children greet me with hugs. What more could a man need to be happy?" The simple sincerity of Finn's words struck the king like a bolt of lightning. Bread and cheese? The hugs of his children? These were things so simple, so human. They were treasures that couldn't be locked in a vault or worn on a crown. That night, King Alaric couldn't sleep. The weight of his crown felt heavier than ever before. He thought of his life, a meticulously orchestrated performance where he was the lead actor, but an actor who had forgotten his own feelings. He yearned for the warmth of a shared laugh, the comfort of a simple meal earned with his own hands, the feeling of being just a man, not a symbol. A daring, almost ludicrous idea began to form in his mind. What if he could trade places? What if, just for a while, he could trade his crown for a smile like Finn's? The next morning, he summoned a trusted old advisor, the only one who knew the king not just as a ruler, but as the man he once was. "I am weary of this gilded cage," Alaric confessed. "I want to find what I have lost." The plan was audacious. The king would secretly leave the castle, disguised as a common traveler. In his place, a carefully chosen double, coached by the advisor, would handle the simple ceremonial duties of the court for a short time. He packed a simple tunic, a loaf of bread, and a small pouch of coins, more than enough for a commoner, but a pittance for a king. As he slipped out of a forgotten side gate under the cloak of pre-dawn mist, he felt a thrilling mix of fear and freedom. His first days were a lesson in humility. He, who had never dressed himself, fumbled with the rough laces of his boots. He, whose meals were prepared by a legion of chefs, learned to haggle for a piece of fruit and found it tasted sweeter than any royal feast. He took odd jobs in villages, mending fences and stacking hay alongside farmers. The work was hard. His muscles ached, and his hands, once soft and pale, became calloused and tan. Yet, with every ache, a piece of his old hollow self seemed to fall away. One evening, he shared a campfire with a group of traveling musicians. They didn't know he was a king. To them, he was just Ari, a man with a quiet presence and watchful eyes. They shared their meager stew with him, and in return, he listened to their songs of adventure, heartbreak, and simple joys. One of them handed him a small wooden flute. "You look like you have stories in your heart, friend. Why not let them out?" Hesitantly, Alaric, who had only ever commanded orchestras, put the flute to his lips and played a simple, melancholic tune he remembered from his childhood. The notes weren't perfect, but they were his. And as the final note faded into the crackling of the fire, one of the musicians smiled at him. "See, music is in everyone." In that shared moment of vulnerability and acceptance, Alaric felt the first real flicker of warmth in his soul. He traveled for months, learning to thatch a roof, to fish in a stream, to simply sit and watch the clouds drift by. He discovered the profound joy in helping a stranger fix a broken cartwheel and receiving nothing but a grateful nod in return. He learned that community wasn't about subjects and a king, it was about people helping people. He found happiness not in grand decrees, but in small acts of kindness. He was no longer King Alaric, ruler of a vast land. He was Ari, a man among men, his worth measured not by his wealth, but by the skill of his hands and the kindness in his heart. One day, while helping to rebuild a small village bridge that had been washed out by a storm, a child offered him a freshly picked apple. "Thank you for helping us, Ari," she said, her smile missing a front tooth. As he took the apple, he caught his reflection in a puddle of water. The face that looked back was weathered and tired, but the eyes were bright. And on his lips was a smile, not a practiced royal grimace, but a genuine, effortless curve. It was Finn's smile. It was the musician's smile. It was the little girl's smile. It was his. In that moment, he understood. Happiness wasn't a secret to be discovered or a treasure to be won. It was a bridge to be built, connecting one heart to another. His journey had come full circle. He knew he had to return. He bid farewell to his newfound friends and made his way back to the capital. When he arrived at the castle, no longer in disguise but still clad in his simple traveler's clothes, the guards at first didn't recognize him. But when they looked into his eyes, they saw their king. The old advisor rushed to greet him, relief washing over his face. "Your Majesty, you have returned." Alaric walked through the grand halls, but now they didn't feel so empty. He saw them not as a display of power, but as a home he had a duty to fill with warmth. That evening, he dismissed the royal chefs, and, in the vast castle kitchen, he prepared a simple stew, much like the one he had shared around the campfire. He invited not nobles and dignitaries, but Finn the gardener, the palace guards, the maids, and the stable hands to his table. He sat among them, not at the head of the table, but in their midst. He shared his bread, listened to their stories, and laughed with them. From that day on, King Alaric ruled differently. Yes, he still wore the crown when duty demanded, but its weight was no longer a burden. He had learned that a king's true power wasn't in his authority, but in his connection to his people. He established councils where common folk could voice their concerns. He spent less time in the throne room and more time in the villages, listening, learning, and helping. He didn't just rule his kingdom, he became a part of it. He had traded his crown for a smile, and in doing so, he had found that his kingdom was richer than ever before, filled with the immeasurable treasure of shared joy. He became known not as Alaric the Great or Alaric the Magnificent, but as Alaric the Happy King who understood that the heaviest crowns are often the emptiest, and the greatest wealth is a heart full of smiles. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and consider subscribing for more tales that explore the things that truly matter. We'll see you in the next one.